Hi there, the 3rd of June is World Bicycle Day, so I thought we'd celebrate by making this cute little cyclist pendant. And if you want to see more techniques and tutorials like this one, hit that subscribe button. Now get on your bike and let's get wrapping. The materials you need are 1mm diameter or 18 gauge copper wire, 0.4mm diameter or 26 gauge copper wire, and a small bead. Mine's 6mm. And the tools you need are chain nose pliers, round nose pliers or bell making pliers, wire cutters, a mandrel that's about 40mm in diameter, and a hammer and block. So we're going to start by shaping the cycle, which is also the frame that everything else sits on. And I'm starting with 15cm of wire, which is about 6 inches. I'm going to start by shaping the back wheel. So I'm going to use the mandrel for that and just take the wire around the mandrel. It's quite difficult to get the curve on that very end piece, but you can just use your pliers to shape it. I'm then going to kick that wire up to start creating the frame. I'm going to put my pliers on the circle side of the bend, just so I don't distort that hoop. And I want to position that bend so I've got a complete circle for the wheel. And this also doubles as the cyclist's back, so I'm just going to curve that slightly. And then I'll use my round nose pliers to put in a small loop. This will be the hanging loop for the pendant. And this second side of the triangle will be behind the cyclist's arms. I'll then kick up the wire again and form the front wheel around my mandrel. Once you've shaped the wheel, you can adjust the angle to position it correctly. And then finally, I'll bend that wire to create the bottom of the triangle and head back to where we started. Now I've only just got enough wire here. There's a little bit left to trim. So it might be better to start with slightly more than 15cm. And just trim off the excess. Now you could solder the ends together if you want to, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to hammer those ends to splay them out a bit. That will help stop the weaving wire from slipping off. And then I'm going to hammer the whole shape. I'm going to concentrate on the wheels because I do want to flatten them slightly. And you can shape these as much as you want. Avoid where the wires cross, but hammer the rest of the frame to work harden it. Now this will expand the wire out a bit, so I'm just going to reform the wheels around the mandrel. And make sure the wires are in place. And that's the cycle frame finished. The cyclist is made in 2 parts, and we'll start with the head and arms. I've got a piece of the 1mm wire here that's 9cm long, which is just under 4 inches, and I'm going to bend it in the centre. I just find this helps in shaping around the bead, and I'm using the step on my pliers that's about the same size as the bead, so it fits into that curve nicely. I'm then going to take my 0.4mm wire And I need about 50 centimetres in total for this piece. And I want to leave a tail of 10 to 15 centimetres and then coil around that curve. I'll then thread the bead on and take the tail wire through in the opposite direction. I can then pull those wires tightly to get the bead into place. And I'll continue the coil on both sides. I just need enough to get around the bead. And I'll bend those coiled wires around the bottom of the bead and cross them over. And then want to bend both of those wires back so the ends are parallel. And I'll straighten them up a bit so I can weave them together. Now, using the long tail of wire, I'm going to take it over where it's coiling from, through between the two wires, and then around that top wire. I'll then take it through between them again and coil 5 times on the bottom wire. I'll then take it through between the two wires and coil around the top wire once. Take it back through and coil around the bottom wire 5 times. And this 5-1 weave is what I'm going to use for the cyclist. Incidentally, I'm not giving him a giraffe neck here. This is actually supposed to be part of his arm. And he's going to be positioned on the cycle about there, with his arm coming down that side of the triangle. So I need to create his elbow. I'll bend the inside wire first, and then the outside wire to meet it. I'm just going to sit about there once I start attaching him. And I don't need that top tail of wire, so I'll cut that off. And then for the cyclist legs, I need about 10 centimetres of the 1mm wire. That's about 4 inches. And I'm going to bend it in half. I want the 2 wires to be parallel with a slight gap between them. Then I'll take some of my 0.4mm wire, and I need about 25 to 30 centimetres here, and I will need another piece of about 25 centimetres to finish the pendant. So I'm going to start at the end of the weaving wire, and at that fold in the frame wire, and I'm going to coil 5 times on the bottom wire, and then through between them, over once on the top wire, and back. And I'll be doing the same weave as for the arms. Now I'm not going to weave much of this because I'm going to be attaching it on that bottom part of the triangle. But I will make the bend, which will be the cyclist's knee. And then I can just check the positioning and bend the wires again to make the other leg. And this leg's going to be straight down. Now I'm quite happy with their shape and positioning. And I'm just going to trim those frame wires to the length I want. You could leave this until they're attached, but I think it's a bit easier to see where I'm going if I trim them. And that's the Cyclist shaped up and ready to weave onto the frame. So all we need to do now is fix the elements together. But first of all, I'm just going to curve the ends of the arms downwards. This helps finish the ends of the wires, keeps the weaving wire in place, and helps to prevent snagging. Now I'm just going to weave down the arms until I get to one of the frame wires. I'll then take that weaving wire around the frame wire in another figure of 8 shape in the same way that I've done the weave. I'll then continue the weave along the arms. It's a little bit difficult to keep in place and show you at the same time, but I hope you get the idea of what I'm doing. And I'll continue that weave in exactly the same way as before, with 5 wraps on the bottom wire and 1 on the top. But every 5 or 6 wraps, I'm going to take the weaving wire around that frame at the back. And the more anchor points you've got, the more solid the piece is. And once I get to the end, I'll take the weaving wire around that outside wire one more time. And then I'm just going to wrap 3 times around that bottom part of the triangle to fix the weaving wire in place. Now, this is still a little bit wobbly, but I can fix it later on. So I can now cut off that weaving wire and make sure the end's neat. Now for the legs, I'm going to do the same thing. I've woven up to where that bottom of the triangle is. I'll take the weaving wire once around that. And then continue weaving the legs. It will be a bit wobbly to start with because it's only fixed at one point. But just continue that 5-1 weave up the leg, around the knee, and up to where the legs meet the top part of the triangle. Now once we've gotten to that top part of the triangle, I'm going to take the weaving wire around that back frame, but then I'll coil upwards towards the arms. This just helps it to look more like the body of the cyclist rather than the frame of the bike. Once we've coiled up the frame, we could trim that weaving wire off. But because my head and arms are a little bit wobbly, I'm going to use that weaving wire and take it around my cyclist's elbow. And then down the frame at the back to finish off. Now we need to finish weaving the cyclist's legs. I'll need another 25cm piece of weaving wire, and I'm just going to coil the rest of that back frame wire so it blends in. And then once we get up to where we'd left the weave before, I'll take the wire through to the front and continue that 5-1 weave. I'll take it around that curve, and then where the legs meet the frame again, I'll take the weaving wire around the back. And then I'll continue weaving down the legs and anchoring the legs to the frame just where that inside part of the wheel is. And I want to anchor this 2 or 3 times. The more anchor points you've got, the better. Now that's quite nice and solid. So I'll just finish weaving down the legs and I'll end with the 5 coils on one wire. And then, as I did with the arms, I'm just going to bend back the ends of the leg. And then trim off all my weaving wires and tuck in the ends. And that's my cyclist pendant finished. I hope you enjoyed the video. If so, hit that like button below. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel and head over to my website for more hints, tips and projects. Thanks for watching and I'll see you soon.